In the moment when the life of a single family hung by nothing more than a piece of bread, an entire Apache tribe held its breath, waiting for a decision no one could have predicted. The sun burned relentlessly over the jagged canyon, painting the rocky cliffs in harsh shades of gold and crimson. Dust rose from the dry, cracked earth with every gust of wind, and the scent of sagebrush hung heavy in the air. This stretch of land had always been dangerous, a liminal zone where the boundaries between Apache hunting grounds and settler territory blurred like a mirage in the desert heat. Travelers whispered in the settlements of those who entered these canyons and were never seen again. Chief Dakota, a seasoned leader of the Apache, stood atop a ridge, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. Years of hardship had carved lines into his face, and the weight of his people's suffering pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had led his warriors through winters that claimed children, summers that stole the buffalo herds, and conflicts with settlers that left nothing but bitterness in their wake. Yet beneath his stern exterior, he carried a mind that weighed every choice with care and a heart that remembered every loss. Below him, moving cautiously along a narrow trail, was a small settler family, John and Mary Winslow, with their daughter Emma, barely 8 years old, clutching a ragged cornhusk doll. Their wagon wheels creaked under the strain of travel, and the scant supplies rattled in their packs. Hunger marked their faces, but it was fear that made their movements tentative. They had wandered off course, hoping to reach safer lands, and now found themselves on the very ground that Chief Dakota's people had long defended. Dakota signaled silently to the scouts at his side, and soon the canyon rim bristled with warriors, their horses steady on the rocky slopes, eyes fixed on the strangers below. The tension was tangible, the kind that made the hair on the back of a man's neck stand on end. Every breath the Winslows took could be misread as defiance. Every twitch of a hand could spark violence. Yet Dakota hesitated not out of weakness, but out of the weight of responsibility. His people had rules, ancient and unyielding for those who trespassed. Justice demanded retribution. But there was something in the small girl's posture, the way she clutched her doll and looked out at the vast canyon with innocent curiosity, that gave him pause. He studied them quietly, weighing centuries of tradition against the flicker of something he had not seen in years, the quiet strength and honesty of a child untouched by hatred. Around him, warriors murmured in readiness, eager to enforce the law, to demand compensation for intrusion. Some were young and hot-headed, their fingers itching on the grips of their weapons, ready to settle scores from old conflicts. Others, the elders, watched silently, knowing that in the life of the wild, every choice echoed across generations. The canyon seemed to hold its breath alongside the tribe. The Winslows, unaware of the full eyes upon them, moved carefully, rationing their dwindling food and whispering to one another about what might come next. Chief Dakota's gaze never left the little girl. He wondered not for the first time if mercy could exist here, on this unforgiving stretch of earth where blood had been spilled for less. Could a moment of kindness outweigh decades of loss? Could the innocence of one child shift the currents of an age-old feud? Every warrior readied themselves, and yet for Dakota, the answer was not immediate. Tradition and loss demanded one thing. Humanity whispered another. In the still, searing heat of that canyon, the stage was set. What happened next would test not only the courage of the family below, but the very heart of the Apache tribe, and leave a mark that generations would remember. The wagon creaked and groaned as it made its slow way along the narrow canyon floor. John Winslow's hands were white with tension as he gripped the reins, glancing nervously at the looming shadows above. Mary sat close beside him, her lips pressed tight, eyes darting between the jagged cliffs and the small figure of their daughter, Emma. The little girl sat quietly in the back, clutching her ragged doll, her small knees drawn up to her chest, yet her eyes betrayed a strange mix of curiosity and determination. Their food was nearly gone, and each meager ration had been stretched thin over the past 2 days. The air was dry and hot, and every gust of wind carried a whiff of sage and dust that seemed to scratch at the throat. Above them, The Apache warriors shifted silently on their horses, creating a living cordon that blocked any possible retreat. Chief Dakota remained atop the ridge, his dark eyes scanning the settlers, weighing their every movement. He signaled with a subtle gesture, and the warriors tightened the circle, their horses stamping impatiently on the rocky ground. They had been trained to read fear, and these outsiders radiated it in every trembling motion. Yet there was more than fear here. There was desperation visible in the way John's hands shook, and Mary's breath came in shallow, controlled gasps. Everett, a younger warrior, his face painted in the traditional crimson and black, clenched his fists on his spear. His gaze was hard, and his muscles coiled as though ready to spring. He had lost a brother to settlers years before, and his memories were fresh with the sting of betrayal and bloodshed. To Everett, the law of the tribe was clear: trespassers paid the price, whether by surrender of goods or by force. He shifted impatiently in his saddle, eager to act before Chief Dakota hesitated. Violence was not only acceptable to him, it was demanded by justice, by the very code that had kept their people alive for generations. Around Everett, the other warriors murmured, some in agreement, some in hesitation. The canyon floor held the tension like a taut rope ready to snap. The settler's wagon looked vulnerable, small against the imposing figures above, yet Chief Dakota's hand remained steady on the reins of judgment. He watched Emma closely, noting the calm in her wide eyes despite the peril. She didn't flinch, didn't shrink back. Her gaze held something unusual, something he hadn't seen in a long time, the unguarded curiosity of a child untouched by hate, untouched by fear. The contrast struck him with quiet force. Here were two worlds colliding, one defined by centuries of tradition and blood, the other by innocence and vulnerability. The law demanded one outcome. His heart whispered another. He remembered the winters when children in his tribe had gone hungry, when loss had stolen innocence, and when justice had sometimes come at a cruel price. And here was a small human being, seemingly so fragile, yet demonstrating a quiet courage that spoke louder than weapons. John spoke softly, trying to negotiate with words he wasn't sure anyone would understand. Mary clutched Emma closer, whispering that everything would be all right, though her own voice trembled. Each syllable carried the weight of their plight, yet it was clear they had nothing to offer that could satisfy the tribe's code. Dakota noted the careful rationing of their remaining provisions, the way the little girl nibbled her food with precision, and something deep within him stirred. Everett shifted again, muttering in the Apache tongue, his eyes narrowing at the chief's pause. He did not understand this hesitation. The girl was small, the family weak, and the law was clear. To Everett, mercy was a luxury the tribe could not afford, and any delay only risked showing weakness. But Chief Dakota did not rush. He saw beyond the immediate law, beyond the immediate thirst for retribution. He saw the chance for something else, a glimpse of what honor and humanity could look like in the harshest of circumstances. The canyon held a suspended breath, every figure poised, every eye alert, every heart in a state of watchful tension. What unfolded here would depend not on weapons, not on anger, but on a quality that was rarely considered in moments of confrontation: the pure, uncalculated courage of a child and the wisdom to recognize it. Dakota's gaze lingered on Emma, and for the first time that morning, a quiet hope took root amidst the tension. A hope that the balance between law and mercy might find a way forward. The tension in the canyon was so thick it seemed almost visible, like heat waves rippling off the sun-scorched rocks. Chief Dakota's gaze remained fixed on the little girl Emma as she sat quietly in the back of the creaking wagon. Her hands clutched the last piece of bread they possessed, a crusty, dry morsel that could hardly sustain a child. Yet she held it carefully with the solemnity of someone offering a treasure far beyond its simple worth. The family's fate, the balance between mercy and justice, seemed suspended in the dusty air of the canyon. Then slowly, deliberately, Emma stood. She held the piece of bread out toward Chief Dakota, her small arm trembling only slightly under the weight of her courage. Her eyes wide and unafraid met his with a quiet confidence. "You can have my bread," she said softly, her voice carrying in the tense silence like a single note in a vast empty hall. It was not a plea. It was not a bargaining chip. It was a gift pure and simple, offered without fear or calculation. For a heartbeat, the canyon seemed to pause. Even the wind held its breath. Everett's face twisted in disbelief, anger rising in a torrent he could not control. How could this tiny human, the enemy's child, extend generosity where only retribution was expected? His fingers twitched on the spear. He still held the instinct for violence screaming within him. But around him, the elders of the tribe, the ones whose faces were lined by decades of struggle and loss, studied the scene with measured eyes. They saw what Everett could not: the raw honesty, the unblemished courage, and the kind of honor that comes from a heart untainted by fear or hatred. Chief Dakota felt a tremor deep within him, one that went beyond the usual pulse of command. Memories surfaced, unbidden: his own daughter, lost to the harsh winters, and the diseases that had come with settlers' encroachment, a child who had shared even the last morsel of dried meat with a wounded bird, the embodiment of selfless kindness. He swallowed hard, the taste of sorrow and recognition mingling with the dry dust in his throat. Here was another child, one not of his blood, yet showing the same unyielding humanity, the same courage that transcended the cruelty of circumstance. Everett stepped forward, anger flaring. "This is a trick," he spat in the Apache tongue, his voice sharp with disbelief. "They are the enemy. They have taken from us, driven our buffalo away, and poisoned our rivers. A child cannot erase that with crumbs." His spear raised, he was ready to strike to enforce what he believed was justice. The younger warriors tensed beside him, torn between loyalty to the law and recognition of what they were witnessing. But Chief Dakota remained calm. He gestured subtly to the surrounding warriors, and the elders nodded imperceptibly. Slowly, Dakota descended from his ridge, each step deliberate, measured, and deliberate, closing the distance between himself and the wagon. The air quivered with anticipation, every eye on him, and the small offering in Emma's hand. She did not flinch. She did not retreat. The purity of her action demanded acknowledgement. When he reached her, Dakota did not take the bread abruptly, nor did he touch her hand. Instead, his weathered fingers closed gently around the small crust, a symbolic act of acceptance rather than seizure. Around him, the younger warriors hesitated. Everett's eyes widened disbelief, written across every line of his face. Some of the older warriors shifted subtly, forming a protective circle around the wagon, creating a living barrier that symbolized a profound shift: respect, honor, and the recognition that a child's courage could transcend even the oldest grievances. In that moment, Dakota's mind reflected on the lessons that children could teach. A simple act of generosity could pierce layers of anger and suspicion that years of conflict could not dissolve. He realized that justice, when tempered by compassion, did not weaken the tribe, it elevated it. Here was a tangible example of a principle that generations had forgotten, brought vividly to life by the innocence of a child. Everett's grip on his spear faltered. He looked around at the other warriors, at the solemn faces of the elders, and at Chief Dakota himself. For the first time, he was uncertain. Was the law absolute, or was there a higher form of honor, one that required recognition of courage and integrity, even from an enemy? The question gnawed at him, and slowly, begrudgingly, he lowered his weapon. The symbolic act did not go unnoticed by the younger warriors, who whispered among themselves, amazed by the courage of a girl who had risked everything simply to act rightly. In response, they formed a tighter circle around the wagon, their postures protective rather than threatening. The image was striking. The once tense canyon now held a tableau of unity and respect, with Chief Dakota at the center, accepting a child's gift that had transformed the atmosphere from hostility to cautious reverence. Emma's small smile, offered without expectation, rippled through the crowd, softening hearts hardened by loss and strife. For Dakota, It was a moment of clarity, a reminder of why the tribe endured not merely through strength of arms, but through recognition of honor, integrity, and the courage to do what is right even when it comes from the most unexpected source. The canyon, once tense with the threat of bloodshed, now resonated with a profound sense of possibility that kindness offered freely could reshape the course of history, even amidst the harshest landscapes of the wild frontier. Just as the canyon seemed to exhale in relief, a new threat thundered over the ridge. Dutch Corian and his band of armed settlers appeared spurring their horses with intent as clear as the glint of their rifles in the sunlight. They were not lost travelers, nor desperate families. They were aggressors, seeking confrontation, eager to assert dominance over anyone who stood in their way. The canyon, once tense with anticipation, now bristled with imminent danger. Chief Tekota's eyes narrowed. He understood immediately that these men could undo all that had just been achieved. The small act of generosity from Emma had shifted the atmosphere, but this new wave of hostility threatened to ignite a violent storm. Without hesitation, Tekota positioned himself before the Winslow family, placing his presence as a shield. "They are under our protection," he declared, his voice steady and commanding. Around him, the tribe moved instinctively, forming a disciplined circle that combined respect for the child's courage with readiness for conflict. Everett and the younger warriors took positions along the canyon walls, while the elders subtly guided their movements, using every fold of the terrain to the tribe's advantage. The Apache knew the land intimately, the hidden ridges, narrow passages, and sudden drops. Tekota's strategy was not recklessness. It was a calculated assertion of dominance, a demonstration that aggression would meet resistance at every turn. Dutch Corian's confidence faltered as he realized he had underestimated the precision and experience of Tekota's warriors. The confrontation was brief but decisive. The settlers, faced with unexpected resistance and an unyielding display of unity, were forced to retreat. Their angry shouts echoed through the canyon, fading as the riders disappeared over the ridge, leaving behind nothing but dust and the faint tension of narrowly avoided violence. Emma, John, and Mary remained unharmed, their relief palpable. Yet the gravity of what had just transpired was not lost on anyone present. In the quiet that followed, Chief Tekota lowered his gaze to the girl who had begun it all. Her small act of sharing had not only bridged the gap between the family and the tribe, but had also given purpose to the warrior's discipline, turning potential bloodshed into an affirmation of honor and protection. For the tribe, it was a reminder that courage and morality were not always demonstrated through strength. Alone, they could be expressed through intelligence, restraint, and respect for the innocence of others. The canyon, once a symbol of danger and hostility, now felt transformed. The Winslow's survival was a testament to the power of cooperation and insight, as well as the profound influence of kindness in even the harshest circumstances. Every warrior had witnessed how a single selfless act could redirect the course of events, softening hearts hardened by history and reinforcing the value of thoughtful, principled action over impulsive aggression. For viewers today, the lesson resonates beyond the Old West. Even in modern conflicts between neighbors, communities, or nations, the principle remains an unexpected act of kindness, courage, or generosity can diffuse tension, build trust, and create space for reconciliation. Chief Tekota's decision to protect the Winslows was more than an assertion of tribal honor. It was a timeless reminder that justice guided by empathy carries power greater than force alone. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the canyon, the tribe and the family shared a silent acknowledgement the world could be harsh and unforgiving. But even in the most perilous circumstances, intelligence, courage, and humanity had the capacity to prevail. Emma's innocence and generosity had been the catalyst, but it was the wisdom and unity of Chief Tekota and his warriors that ensured that lesson endured, echoing long after the dust had settled. As the canyon settled into the quiet of late afternoon, Chief Dakota stood among his warriors, reflecting on the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The day had tested courage, honor, and humanity in ways few could imagine. A small family of settlers had wandered into Apache territory vulnerable and hungry, unaware of the peril that surrounded them. Yet, it was the innocence and generosity of one small child, Emma, that had reshaped the course of the encounter. Offering her last piece of bread without fear or calculation, she reminded everyone present that true courage and kindness often come from the most unexpected places. The tribe, hardened by decades of conflict loss, and suspicion, now recognized something profound. Even the smallest, sincerest gesture can challenge long-held prejudices and shift the attitudes of those who have lived too long with fear and mistrust. Chief Dakota, recalling his own daughter, who had been lost to the harshness of winter and the ravages of disease, felt a quiet shift in his heart. Emma's action mirrored the purity and bravery of a child he had loved and lost. In that moment, he realized that moral courage, compassion offered without expectation, carries a power that even the fiercest warrior cannot command. For the elders and the warriors, the lesson was clear. Strength alone does not define honor. Justice tempered with empathy, wisdom guided by compassion and courage, expressed through selflessness, these are the qualities that endure. Emma's simple act had prevented violence, forged understanding, and created a bond between two worlds often defined by fear and conflict. The tribe understood that the choices they make, even in moments of high tension, can leave a lasting legacy, shaping not just the immediate outcome, but the story told across generations. The Winslow family prepared to continue their journey, their wagon wheels stirring up the red dust of the canyon floor. John and Mary looked at their daughter with awe, recognizing that bravery often does not roar. Sometimes it speaks quietly in acts of generosity and integrity. Emma's courage had not only ensured the safety of her family, but had left them with a story to carry forward, a story of Chief Dakota, his warriors, and the Apache people, a tale of humanity prevailing in the harshest of circumstances. For viewers, especially those over 45, the message resonates deeply. It highlights enduring values, the importance of family, the weight of honor, the necessity of courage, and the transformative power of kindness across cultural divides. In a world still shaped by misunderstandings, conflicts, and long-held grievances, the story of Emma and the Apache tribe reminds us that even the smallest acts of empathy and bravery can ripple outward, bridging gaps, softening hearts, and changing the course of communities. As the sun dipped behind the canyon walls, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape, the tribe and the settlers shared a silent acknowledgement of what had transpired. The day had begun with fear, uncertainty, and the potential for tragedy, yet it ended with understanding, respect, and a powerful testament to the enduring strength of character. Chief Dakota and his warriors would carry this lesson forward, just as the Winslows would, sharing the story of courage, honor, and generosity wherever they traveled. And to you watching this story unfold, remember that even the smallest gesture can carry enormous significance. If this tale has touched your heart, we invite you to follow Epic Western Stories. Share this video, leave a like, and comment below so that together we can continue exploring the Wild West stories full of adventure, humanity, and the timeless lessons that shape our understanding of courage, honor, and compassion.